Okay, hello everyone. Oh, I forgot my printout though. Okay, good afternoon everyone. We'll be starting shortly. I just remembered I did pull out a pink t-shirt that I found, but I didn't put it on, and now I don't have time. But, oh, wow. Hi, Rochelle.
Hi, sorry about that. I just had to dart out at the end of the last meeting, but I just got a bit of a distracting background here for the short term, so I'm just going to take my picture off, but I'll be here.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for pulling double duty, but yeah, thank you.
John.
Yes.
It's Alan here. You hear me?
I can hear you really clearly, actually.
There we go. Sorry, I'm double booked today, so I've got about an hour to participate today. Just to give you the heads up on that one.
All right, thank you. Okay, so we'll kick off now. So I'd like to open the meeting at 1:30 exactly, and to ask or to recognize that we're conducting our business today on the territories of the Nch'anth people. Specifically, our offices are mostly located on the territories of the Hoop-Etchesit and the Tishat First Nation, but to recognize that we are conducting our business there today. I would note that our meeting is being recorded and broadcast live on YouTube and on the regional district website, just embedded YouTube. And that if anyone wishes to participate or ask a question when the time comes, you can do so through the email address of responses@acrd.bc.ca. We also have the capacity of having attendees into the meeting, so that is something that you can attend this meeting as a part of the gallery. If you set that up beforehand, an invite will be sent to you. And that will continue into the future until the COVID situation is done. Secondly, I'd like to recognize that we have several people who are wearing either pink shirts or are evoking pink shirts in some way, shape, or form, and I'd like to thank you for doing so. Especially Pat, you really rocked it. That's awesome. I do have a pink shirt. It's a button-up shirt. It no longer fits, and I don't know why. But I have a t-shirt that I forgot to throw on before the meeting, so I do apologize. So with that in mind, we do have an agenda before us, and I'm wondering, Wendy, if we have any additions to the agenda. I didn't see any in email, but there's always a chance that I've missed something.
No, I'm not aware of any, Mr. Chair.
Okay, great. So could we get a motion to approve the agenda, please?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Thank you, Director Cote. And do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Paulson. Any comments? Seeing none. All those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. And the chair will note that John McNabb's boa is amazing. Or Hawaiian lei, I guess. I guess it's also could be Hawaiian. That's pretty good there. Okay, that brings us to the public consultation for the financial plan. Item 3, presentation from our CFO, Terry Fung. So thank you for joining us, and please take it away.
Great, thank you very much. Janice is just going to share her screen for us, and we're going to run through a presentation of the draft 2021 to 2025 financial plan. This is an abbreviated version of the plan or of the presentation that staff did last week at the Committee of the Whole. This Board of Directors meeting and this presentation in particular were advertised in the local newspapers as part of the official public consultation portion of this year's financial plan, as required by the Local Government Act. Next slide, please. So the purpose of a regional district, there's actually three components of a regional district. It's a local government for the electoral areas. It also is a regional service body for multiple jurisdictions to participate in things such as regional parks or airport functions. It also provides services across the entire regional district for things such as 911. And one role it also plays, which is a little different, is the lobbying role that regional districts play to the senior levels of government on important issues to our region. Lately, that's been a lot regarding transportation, such as the Banfield Road. Next slide, please. So our services are divided up in many different ways, and this just gives you a snapshot of what kind of services we provide to each area. So from an electoral area perspective, we provide a lot of local services like fire protection, animal control on a sub-regional basis. So for example, building inspection is a service that is shared by the electoral areas and is contributed to by those areas. And then examples of regional services include regional planning and 911. Next, please. As us as board members and staff are aware, but for the general public's knowledge, there is 6 electoral areas, 3 member municipalities, and 4 member Treaty First Nations as part of the regional district. And this board is also the same as our regional hospital district board. They're 2 separate legal entities, but the same partners are in both. Next slide shows the representatives from the different areas. So the electoral area directors are elected, and the municipal directors and nation directors are appointed from their respective councils. In terms of financial rules, we're slightly different than municipalities in that each service is standalone. So the services are independent, and each area is only charged for the services that they are provided. And we need to ensure that there is an allocation of staff resources and benefits across those services as the workload, to reflect the workload. And each service must balance. It cannot run a deficit. In terms of this year's draft financial plan, it's for a 5-year period for current year +4. And there is a legislative requirement to have public consultation before adoption, and we must complete the process by March 31st of each year. Next slide, please. In terms of public consultation, a little bit different this year in a pandemic world. We had done some open houses last year, which we thought had actually worked fairly well, but of course, not really an option this year. So we've tried to advertise both on our website and in the paper that all of our board and committee meetings are recorded and live streamed and are available through the ACRD website as well as on YouTube. We have created a budget at acrd.bc.ca feedback email for people to provide their input. And we will be also making community presentations to groups such as the Sprout Lake Community Association over the next 6 weeks. If people are wanting further information or have questions about a particular area, I would actually redirect them back to the recording of the February 17th Committee of the Whole meeting. We go into a lot more detail regarding the plans for this year, or they're welcome to reach out to staff. Next slide. In terms of the development of the financial plan, we take the existing services and the operational needs. This year, we had the draft 2021 to 2024 ACRD strategic plan, which was a new component for staff to try to work into the financial plan. We have the completion of the majority of the asset management plans for the services of the regional district, and had to start trying to determine how we're going to close some of those infrastructure gaps that exist in many of those services. And again, the goal is to adopt a plan with the allocation of resources and staff time that we are able to achieve the desired outcomes of the board. COVID, so obviously a big topic for 2020 that is continuing into 2021, and the provincial government had awarded some provincial grant funding in late fall 2020. So the board is going to be allocating that partly to 2020 and to these other initiatives for 2021 and 2022. So that is a major impact. It created surpluses for us in some services that maybe would have been struggling as a result of the operations in 2020, but also gives us the ability to address some of the needs that have occurred during COVID by allocating these dollars to the different service areas. So that is something that has affected many services for the regional district. Next slide. In terms of resources, we have had a fairly large discussion with the board since probably December about the resources to implement the strategic plan, keep up with existing operations. And so these positions are all in discussion, and all of them have been included in the financial plan. Earlier today, we talked about the communications coordinator being pushed out to 2022. So we will amend the draft financial plan to show that change when we present it on March 10th. In terms of the reserves, there is a couple of services that, because the activities in the service changed dramatically in 2020, there was a significant surplus that was created, and staff is proposing that we create some rate stabilization reserves, which is something we have not done in the past. They're like an operating reserve, and we'll talk about them throughout the budget discussions individually because there's different uses. One of the reserves we're proposing we create it in 2021, but spend all the money in the reserve in 2022. Another one, for example, the 80 custom transit, staff is actually proposing that we put that money into reserve this year to be used over the next 4. So that's just another point of discussion that we still need to get through. And if we decide to create these reserves, then we're going to need to complete the bylaws related to them prior to the end of March. In terms of projects for the regional district, one of the major projects from a planning perspective is the SOMAS Watershed Flood Management Plan. This plan was completed in 2020, but we now need to determine what the next steps are. So that may include a peer review, but it is going to have some significant impacts on planning in building and development in the future. So determining how to move forward with that plan is a major priority for the planning department this year. The agricultural initiatives, this is something that is run through regional planning, and the ACRD contributes approximately $45,000 in some staff time to this initiative every year. But the coordinators that we have hired have been very successful with staff's assistance in getting some extra grant funding. So there is a lot of activity going on for expanding agricultural initiatives, especially into the coastal communities. And so we'll see more of this in 2021. Other planning projects include the housing needs report. So originally we had an application in that was successful through UBCM to do housing needs reports for the rural areas. And then just recently in this past winter, we had that expanded for a regional component and is going to include the 4 treaty nations. This project is going to be done in conjunction with the other municipalities and is a very big and exciting project that is going to take up quite a bit of staff time this year to complete. And the other initiatives that are also on the work plan for the year include completing the zoning bylaw review and the implementation of the bylaw notice enforcement strategy or the ticketing strategy, and hopefully adopting the burning bylaw after some community consultation. Community Works funding is the funding that we receive from the federal government that we can allocate to eligible projects. There's a number of projects that have been on the books from 2020 that were not completed. So we're going to roll those over, hoping to get those projects up and going. But then we've also added these 4 projects. So there's 2 for the Sprout Lake Community Association. One is to upgrade their multi-purpose court, and the other one is to do phase 3 of their hall renovation. There's also a trail expansion for the Sprout Lake Community Park and a bridge out at Evergreen Park as part of Beaver Creek Community Park. Those last 2 initiatives, we've also applied for other restart funding, but we will await to hear the results of our applications. In terms of emergency planning, so COVID has been made this service very busy for both the Alberni Valley service as well as Bamfield, Long Beach, and then also the coordination of the West Coast. So the priorities for 2021 include hiring a protective services coordinator, which should start at the beginning of April. We have a Voyant alert system that is being implemented in the Alberni Valley. In terms of Bamfield, we need to continue to support the volunteer coordinator. In Long Beach, they just adopted their plan, so we need to try to get that program up and running and determine what that model for the program is going to look like. And then finally, we're hoping to provide some more guidance or facilitate some more discussion with the West Coast communities regarding coordination of their emergency plans on the West Coast. From a fire department perspective, business as usual kind of for 2020. Those fires were still going, they were still training, but obviously very modified on how they did their training to meet COVID safety requirements. There's some apparatus to be purchased or just arrived for the departments, and we continue to try to figure out how to fund the infrastructure gaps in all three of these departments, as fire trucks are very expensive, and based on the regulations, they don't last more than 20 years. So we're really trying to focus on making sure that the right apparatus is in each hall and for each fire department, so that we can minimize the cost impacts to the communities. From a regional parks perspective, we have some grant applications going in. In particular, we're really waiting and hoping for funding to finish the last phase of the multi-use path on the West Coast. It's going to be that portion of trail that is going to link the District of Ucluelet area, that end of in Long Beach, to the Parks Canada Trail. So really hopeful that we're going to get that funding. We can get that project going here shortly. Also some work to be done on the log train trail, and to work with Mosaic on getting some backcountry access. So again, another very busy service again in 2021. The airports, I just put them both on the same slide, but obviously they're separate entities. In the Alberni Valley, the main focus for this year will be working with the Alberni Valley Regional Airport Advisory Committee on the visioning exercise to determine the future of that airport. And then from a Long Beach perspective, we have some grant funding to do a fire suppression or a water system upgrade, and that will take a significant amount of staff time to get that program going. From a landfill or a waste management perspective, the main project for this year is finally rolling out the regional organics project. So phase one of this project is to get curbside organics going in the city of Port Alberni in late spring 2021. And then in the fall, once we get the Alberni Valley or the city of Port Alberni up and going, turning our attention to the West Coast facility to get hopefully going in 2022, and then moving towards the electoral areas in the Alberni Valley as well as Bamfield. So lots to do in this, but we should be able to keep things moving with our organics coordinator. And just a little plug that we do have a Sort and Go app that even if you don't have curbside, it's a great app because it also will show you where you can take your recycling items and what is recyclable versus what needs to go to the landfill. Water systems. So for the three water systems, Bamfield had a tough year in 2020, lots of water breaks, and we did some repair work in 2020, which we're going to continue a bit more into 2021. We're also going to have an engineering report for an infrastructure renewal and asset management plan to help us actually do the asset management plan, as we don't have enough information at this time. In terms of Millstream, they're going to add an additional level of treatment with adding UV disinfectant. And for Beaver Creek, they did a fairly large upgrade in 2020. So this year, they're just going to establish a unidirectional flushing program and then let the reserve fund start to build up again for their next water main replacements. Salmon Beach, I would say the main project in Salmon Beach is the upgrade to the sewage, or the septic treatment, as well as they're going to implement a 5-year interior road improvement plan for the area. So those are the two main objectives in Salmon Beach this year. West Coast Transit was planned to be implemented in 2021, but because of COVID, BC Transit has pushed everything back a year. So the plan will be for implementation in 2022, but there's lots of work to be done in 2021, including trying to find a service provider, having to set up bus stops planning, construction, all those things. So that is to commence. At this point, the timeline is for summer 2022. And finally, it is a separate legal entity, but we thought we'd touch on it here as well. The Regional Hospital District, because it has the same taxpayers, is for the region. It includes the West Coast General Hospital, the Tofino General Hospital, and the Bamfield Hospital as well, or outpost. So the debt for the West Coast General Hospital is continuing to expire. And so we are going to start building a reserve, or we're proposing to start continue building a reserve for future projects, which is likely the Tofino General Hospital is the next likely project on our radar. And then from a hospital district and island health perspective, the main project for them this year is the renovation of the emergency room at the West Coast General Hospital, which we're happy to see started. So I think that is a very fast overview of 280 some odd pages of financial plan, and would be happy for any input from both the board, and I think right now there is also an opportunity for the public to ask if there's anyone on.
Yes. So let us check to see if there are any comments or questions from the public first. Wendy?
Mr. Chair, there are no questions or comments from the public respecting the financial plan.
Okay, great. Thank you. And then now, are there any comments or questions from the board? Okay, going once. Going twice. Okay. Oh, thank you, Director Paulson. Please go ahead.
I wonder if, through you, Mr. Chair, to Terry, if maybe Terry, you could just outline for anybody who may be watching and for this group, just kind of what the timelines and where future meetings are planned and those sorts of things. So just, this isn't the only time for input.
For sure. We are looking for input from now until mid-March. So we will bring back the bylaw for first reading to the Board of Directors at the March 10th board meeting. And then we will hopefully be adopting the bylaw on March 24th. But if we would like some extra time, we can always set an adoption meeting prior on March 31st or prior to March 31st if the board is having further discussion. So definitely encourage the public to reach out and ask any questions or provide input, and we will pass that along to the board in our meetings. We have numerous meetings still to come regarding budget, so we'll definitely get those messages passed along.
Okay, that sounds great. Thank you for asking a question, Director Paulson. I think that brings us to the end, unless anything's magically come in through the email, although I doubt so. I doubt that's happened. I think what we should do is check again at the end of the meeting. In the event that a question comes in from the public, we should take the time to answer that question before we go into any sense of in camera. So there is a question period that's just general, but we should just be prepared for that to occur, because almost anyone can actually just come in and watch what they missed, and then they might have a question while we're having the meeting. So we might as well give the time to do that now. I don't think we require any motions to move ahead through here, however. So that brings us to the item 4 of declarations. So unless anybody has any declarations of gifts or perceived conflicts of interest or actual conflicts of interest, we could probably just move through into the minutes. Okay, seeing none, that brings us to the adoption of minutes, the first item, and I think the only one. Nope, there's plenty afterwards, is the Salmon Beach Committee meeting dated February 8th, 2021. Director Roberts, please go ahead.
Yes, I'd move that the minutes of the Salmon Beach Committee meeting held on February 8th, 2021 be adopted.
Great. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Director Bodner. Any comments? All right, seeing none. All those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Okay. Okay, that brings us to item B, which is the Board of Directors meeting dated February 10th, 2021.
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Director McNabb, and seconded by Director Shannon. All right, any comments? Seeing none. All those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. All right, that brings us to the Committee of the Whole meeting for Grants and Aid dated February 11th, 2021. Okay, moved by Director Roberts, seconded by Director Cote. Any comments? Seeing none. All those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. All right, that brings us to the Committee of the Whole 2021 to 2025 Financial Plan and Budget deliberations dated February 17th. Thank you, Director Shannon, seconded by Director Cote. Does anybody have any comments? Seeing none. All those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. All right, and then lastly, the Alberni Valley Regional Airport Advisory Committee meeting dated February 23rd, 2021.
Move approval?
Thank you, Director Cote, seconded by Director Paulson. Any comments? Seeing none. All those in favor? Motion carried. Okay, so that brings us to item 6, and we have 3 petitions, delegations, and presentations. First up, we have Mr. Travis and John Wilson, as well as Samantha Wilson, potentially, from Tofino Bus Lines, with an update on transportation services. Before you start, though, generally speaking, you have a 10-minute window of presentation. If you get close to that time, I might hold up 2 fingers or 1 finger. I'm not interrupting you. I'm just telling you how much time you have left. If I do interrupt you, I'll just say something. But if you don't sound like you're headed to the end of your conversation within, a grace period, I'll probably hit pause and ask the directors if it's okay to keep going past the 10 minutes. But without further ado, welcome, Travis, and please take it away.
Thank you. Yeah, John and Samantha weren't able to free themselves up, so I'll be speaking on behalf. I don't know that I'll even need 10 minutes given COVID. I'm sure lots of people have seen the stuff on the news recently that we've requested help from the government and whatnot to try and keep the service viable. But quick synopsis is obviously COVID shut down the service originally about March 15th-ish, 2020. We were able to get going again on a very limited basis in July of 2020, just a few runs here and there for July, August, September. Saw a little bit of movement, not a ton, but was viable-ish given the wage subsidy and whatnot for the travelers that were coming. But as we headed into the fall and winter, and as COVID started to rise again, we received less and less demand for people riding the bus, and it just became not really viable anymore to operate. And with COVID getting worse in mid-December, we decided we had to shut down. At the time, we felt temporarily to kind of get through the bad part of COVID and whatnot. And just with the current outlook of COVID, bringing us up to date, there hasn't been any optimism for people being able to travel and whatnot to start the service back up again. So we're still temporarily, it's more of a indefinite suspension of services now. And now that we're in February, we're coming up to a year of COVID and situation. And like many businesses, there's just not really a viable way to operate the service right now, given that people aren't supposed to travel even though there is lots of people that do need to travel for medical appointments and things like that, there isn't enough people to ride the bus to make it viable. So that's sort of where we're at right now. Is there is nothing running on the island, but we've made a proposal to the government, which I'm hoping everyone's sort of seen that or heard about it on the news or whatnot. And we've had discussions. Myself and John have been in Zoom meetings ourselves with local MLAs and communities that we service, and getting their support. And we put a proposal together for the Minister of Transportation, which he's been fairly supportive of, but he's supportive of it, and he's put a proposal together from what we gave him to the Ministry of Finance, who actually has the ability to release funds. The basis of what we put together is that, you know, we can't operate there without support. Probably if we don't get support, there might not be able to get the bus moving for upwards of a year. It's kind of what we've said. So if we want the bus running, we need the government support to make up the shortfalls that are currently there to have intercity service on Vancouver Island. And they know that. And as I mentioned previously, there is people that, even though travel is sort of restricted right now, there's people that have to travel to get to appointments and to areas of the island that is just necessary. It is. And those people are somewhat stranded right now. And a large portion of those communities are First Nations communities or rural communities and things like that, right? So we've gotten a lot of support from those communities as well. And almost every MLA on the island, including the ones in your community, Josie's been a huge proponent and supporter of us, and she's made calls to the minister's office on our behalf as well. So we feel confident that something is coming. Even the minister has led us to believe that something positive is coming. What level that is, we don't really know. We're hoping to find out within a couple of weeks, and then we'll kind of have more of a direction on where the transportation on the island is going. We would like to get operating, and I'm sure the people in your communities would like to have another viable transportation option out there as well. And we're hopeful that we can get that going. But as it stands right now, I don't know when that will be, and until I get sort of more clear direction from the government there. Yeah, that's kind of status quo and what the outlook is. As I say, we're very hopeful, and it does sound positive right now, but without the government support, there isn't a way for us to make the service happen right now. So that's kind of where we're at. On the West Coast, that we do still operate school bus services, and we'll be operating, it sounds like, the Tofino summer transit run that has run every year, except for last year because of COVID. But I've been in talks with the district of Tofino with the last couple of weeks, and they're hopeful to make some form of that service work this year. So there will be hopefully that moving this summer. But yeah, that's kind of where we're at. It's I know it's short and concise and whatnot, but unfortunately it's a sad where we're at with our services right now. And I know we've had, as I said, we've had a lot of support from lots of areas on the island, and as I say, a large portion of that support comes from the communities that you guys are part of, and we thank you for that. And yeah, we're hopeful we can get back to servicing those communities again here very shortly. Obviously open to any questions or comments anyone has, and be happy to answer those.
Great, and thank you for that. And does anyone have any comments or questions? Director Cote, then Director Beckett.
Thank you. Through the chair, thank you for coming and talking to us. We are so very supportive of a bus service for our whole region, knowing that we have a huge ridership that from the community that need a service that you provide. I know that the health networks and the Association of Vancouver Island and Coastal Communities, which is basically Vancouver Island have all supported a letter to the province regarding having this service put back with support of some sort. And I'm not sure how that would look, but really want to let you know that we all would like to see your service come back.
No, I really do appreciate that. That's fantastic. The amount of support we've gotten has been overwhelming. We are, I'm not sure if you all know, we are a family-run business, and it's obviously been hard on our family. And seeing the support we've gotten, not only from government and communities, but also just we started a change.com page, and I think we're at like 12,000 people have signed it now, and it just shows how many, like you say, how many people need this service and want this service. And yeah, no, I appreciate your comments, and as I say, we're really hopeful that something will come and that we can get back servicing the communities on the island soon.
Next up, I have Director Beckett and then Director Steer. Did I miss anyone? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Travis, I'm Bob Beckett from representing Banfield, and it was over a year ago that I was in Victoria and I met with John and other staff at your office, and I just want to thank you for all of the years of service to our community and to the Banfield Marine Sciences Center. And I'm looking forward to the day when you'll resume that route. And I know it's not likely until next year, but with the Hawaiiat project, the road improvements, and with your commitment to serving our community, I look forward to seeing your buses come into our community once again. Please pass on our best wishes.
Thank you very much.
I have Director Steer.
Right. Thank you, Travis. I'm Director Steer from the District of Tofino, and I'm just going to echo what Directors Beckett and Cote have said in terms of the significance of Tofino Bus to the District of Tofino and the services that you've provided over the years, the contract services to SD70. You take my kids to school on a daily basis. So we just wanted to echo that those sentiments that were expressed, and that we are in full support and have been in relationship with Tofino Bus for many years. Your predecessor, of course, is a Tofino resident, and we would just like to thank you and know that we are talking to our MLA, former Mayor Osborne, and she is, as you're well aware, is very, very on top of this issue. So thank you once again.
Thank you very much.
Great. And is there anyone else? Okay, so I have a question in regards to kind of suspending indefinitely. Do you have signs in at the top of your mind, or your in terms of what you would see in order to kind of reopen or continue service? I know that that's up in the air, but are there indicators that we could look for or help make happen in order for that to happen sooner than later? I know that we've talked about sending support to the province and asking the province for support. Are there other things that we or the province can do to help kind of create the environment in which Wilson Transport feels safe to start running it again?
Yeah, like the big thing is, like we see, is that people need to feel, it's not really us, it's more people need to feel safe to travel. Like we can run a bus service right now. We're not instructed not to run. We have to create distancing, and we can't run them full and things like that, but we could run a bus right now. It's just simply there is not a business model right now to operate when you're going to carry 5 or 6 people on the bus. You know, you just can't financially make that work. So it's more on the economic environment and how people feel given the COVID situation. So what we need to see is lesser restrictions, opening up people to travel. And we're optimistic, you know, say the government doesn't come to our aid, we're optimistic we can open up again, like we did last summer, some services. There was some pent up travel that happened towards Tofino. You know, people can't go to Mexico, but maybe they go to Tofino for the summer. So the run to Tofino did okay over the summer. So things like that, even if government help doesn't come, I can see those things kind of maybe opening up or whatnot. And obviously, by extension, going to Tofino, we'd be going through Port Alberni and that kind of stuff. So we're optimistic that those things will probably happen again. With spring and summer, better weather. It seems like last year, even if COVID's not gone or the vaccines aren't as prevalent as we want them to be, that there's a chance that things will die down a little bit with the better weather, and we can have some movement again. That's the biggest one. If as long as people feel safe and they're sort of instructed that they can at least move, at least on the island or provincially, you'll see people want to move, because I think we're all feeling kind of trapped in our houses these days. And once we're allowed to kind of do even anything, I think people will want to. So those are the things that we're looking for, is the opportunity that people will want to travel. It's less that we don't want to run. It's more that people aren't out there to ride the bus right now.
And I think that's the assumption of the board, but I wanted to make sure that we gave you the opportunity to say that. I think managing the expectations is really important. Your services are very a part of the cultural fabric here, and it's something that we do need to keep in mind as time goes by. There's plenty of things that can happen that actually make things better in the future. Depends on how we roll out the vaccines, like you said. But in the event that the island becomes a green zone of some sort, maybe those kind of things can happen as well. So we'll see. But I'm optimistic as you are, and I hope things go well. Oh, Director Paulson, please leave us off.
Travis, thanks for being with us today. And I've dealt with your company through charter service with the Bulldogs.
Nice.
Throughout the province and into the northern U.S. But just a quick question. Are you still able to run charter service in particular? I'm thinking employees going back and forth from Port Alberni to the fish processing plants and stuff like that?
Yeah, we are. We're still actually, the fish plant just they met their quota early this year. Actually, they had good fishing, so they just shut down for a couple of months to change over, and then we'll be going again in April. But we're allowed to move them. Same kind of thing, though. I think we allow a max of 24 people on the bus. They all have to wear masks. We have special cleaning solutions that have to be used to cleaning the bus to prevent spread of things and whatnot. So there's nothing stopping. It's sort of like airlines. There's nothing stopping them from running, us from running. You just have to work within the guidelines. And the biggest one for us is you basically have to chop your capacity in half, because instead of having two people beside each other, you can only have one person per 2 seats, kind of thing. So that makes it somewhat challenging on scheduled service, because your selling capability has gone in half. Charters, we can still run charters, but again, there's not a lot of people running charters. We have a few trips for some small school trips going up to Mount Washington this time of year and stuff like that. But with hockey being shut down and everything like that, it's pretty quiet. But that's the tough part, is we technically are allowed to operate. We just there's just not the people or groups or whatnot around right now to move. So there's a lot of machinery just kind of parked collecting dust right now.
Okay. All right. So on behalf of the board, I'd like to thank you for your presentation and for the update. And we hope to see you rolling sooner than later.
I appreciate all the support. As I say, if the day to reach out and just on any significant changes.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so that brings us to the next item. And I'm sorry, Paul, but I don't know how to pronounce your last name. It's either Blay or Blaise. And Mr. Jordan Tidy, I think you're online as well. So you're here to talk about industrial land inventory and action plan. So thank you and welcome.
Thank you, Chairman Jack. Your first pronunciation was bang on, Blay. You got it. It's a pleasure to be here with you and members of the board. Thanks for including us on the agenda. We're going to give a presentation that we gave to City Council, the City of Port Alberni City Council on Monday. It's with respect to industrial land strategy and investment attraction community profiles. We have a short presentation. We'll fall within the 10 minutes requirement here, and then we'd be very happy to take questions from members of the board. I think the main purpose of the document of the strategy is to help give you and to give your staff some intelligence on what the possibilities are when it comes to responding to industrial inquiries. I think this project was motivated as Mr. Erg and Mr. Deacon from the city would say, is motivated by the multitude of inquiries that have been received by the community in the region over the last couple of years, and the inability to cite industrial developments. So Jordan is going to speak more specifically to the findings. They cover aspects of the investigation of the potential for certain industrial lands, as well as the potential for certain types of industrial developments as a whole. So for now, I'll turn it over to Jordan, and he'll walk you through a few slides. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Is everyone able to see the presentation?
Yes,
Fantastic. So just to give everyone a quick overview of the project itself, so we essentially had our project initiation and kickoff. Within that, we went into phase 2, which was our market research and lands inventory. So in partnership with the city and with Pat at the city and working with Mike, the regional district, we developed a set of evaluation criteria for lands in terms of the inventory itself. We did an economic base analysis for the region. We developed a sector analysis, so looking at specific sectors and opportunities for industrial lands once they've been identified. We conducted a number of interviews with businesses and landowners within the region to get a better understanding of what was currently available, what was out there, and how to develop our long list of sites. And then we took that and developed our short list of industrial sites, so the sites that we felt had the highest possible opportunity in terms of developing an industrial park. Phase 3 was all about action planning and reporting. So we got Class D site assessments completed by Coors and Associates Engineering. Then we also developed our draft community profile and action plan, and our final draft and presentation is part of what we're doing today. In terms of the shortlisted sites, I've got the list of them right here. So their designations, 1955 TM5, those are from Coors, but so one of them being the Link Mill site, located south of Port Alberni. The airport lands, we're looking at the lands along Airport Road around Highway 4 to the west, and then Site 1 was 19th and Montrose, which is within the city of Port Alberni, towards the southeast side of the city. So basically, in terms of the breakdown of the sites themselves, we identified the Link Mill site as a really solid potential option, and many of these sites have sort of been the go-to sites when different inquiries have come in, so sort of as options. So they've been discussed multiple times. So that was part of the reason why they were selected as the ones we've do a bit of a deeper dive into. So Link Mill site, you can see we have about 19 hectares, had private road access. This road's actually owned by Mosaic. Now, in terms of servicing issues, there was a lack of water at the site itself. It is currently owned by Mosaic. It's zoned for industrial use. We identified potential contamination, but we were not able to ascertain that specifically, but we identified it as potential. In terms of the Class D estimates, in terms of getting the site connected to sanitary and storm sewer, looked at about $6.4 million, and these estimates are attached to the report in full, so they're as appendix items. We identified agribusiness as a potential subsector that could be useful or could be ideal for that site. Taking a look at the airport lands, 26 hectares on the side of the highway. It's another servicing issue there between meaning lack of water at the site. Mosaic, again, the owner, is currently zoned as Forest Reserve District. We were not aware of or had identified any contamination on that site. And it was assessed at $12.6 million to get sanitary and storm sewer in there and $24.8 million to get water servicing. We identified transportation, warehousing, and manufacturing as good options for those sites. The last site, there were three lots totaling 29.3 hectares just within the city. I understand this particular site will be of less interest to this group. The city, there's access to the highway through the city itself. In terms of servicing issues, is becoming a standard theme, lack of water at the site. The site is actually owned by the city of Port Alberni, which was one of the reasons why it was added to this list, because there's an actual ability to move on the site should it be chosen for future development. Its current zoning is in future development. We had no contamination, known or likely. $6 million was identified for the sanitary and storm sewer servicing review, 5.6 for water servicing, and we identified manufacturing as a potential site for that, potential use for those sites. Moving on from the sites, we identified 3 pillars within our action plan, which was 1, the development of investment-ready land. So it focuses on the lands identified in the project, development constraints, and prioritizing specific infrastructure investments and securing partnerships to develop those investments. The pillars also focus on a lesser degree to enforcing existing land use regulations. So there was some feedback we'd gotten from the community that there were individuals who were using sites that are not zoned for industrial use as industrial use, which is identified as sapping local demand for industrial land. On pillar 2 was a sector-specific investment support, so focused on leveraging data to target specific sectors, investment attraction, creating opportunities to work with the local business community. And by maintaining a focus on critical sectors, the region can establish itself as a destination for investment. The pillar also looks at the role local businesses play in attracting investment and improving local competitiveness, particularly in terms of their expansion opportunities, but also within their supply chains. Pillar 3 is all focused on marketing and promotion. So more particularly focused on developing marketing and promotional materials that create a compelling value proposition. Promotional material tool development is recommended to highlight the region's investment opportunities. Actions and tactics were identified through each of the pillars to provide both the city and the regional district with a roadmap to achieve the region's investment readiness goals. And that's our presentation.
Okay, thank you very much. That brings us on, and I'd just like to open it up for any comments or questions. Oh, could you stop sharing so I could see the screens a bit better? Thank you very much. Oh, thank you. Director Bodner, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much for that report. I must say, when I was reading it, I found it very easy and understandable, and I thank you for that, because some of them can get quite complex. Things that came up for me was the fact that the most common thread was in all these areas was water. And according to science, they're saying that our summer and our weather is going to change, where we're going to be seeing much less precipitation in areas like the West Coast, and water may become a very high priority. So I was just wondering how that would impact on what you have in mind for this area. That's number 1. Number 2 was, it being industrial, things have changed so much regarding industrial land, where people just can't come in and open up an industry without having to deal with pollution. And if there is pollution, what is the cleanup like? And a good example of that is McLean's Mill right now. And if they do have that, industrial lands are opening up, who is going to be responsible to protect all these rules that would be in place, I would expect. And with the jobs that it would reduce, how many of those jobs would stay in Port Alberni? So that was just a few things that came in mind with that when I was reading. I just wanted to share those concerns. Thank you.
I can dive into the water section first. So, that was, clearly fairly expensive to get water set up to a number of these sites, and definitely an impediment to getting them developed. So when we spoke to the engineering firm, we talked about what potential options might be out there for dry industrial, some ways to, allow the sites to be developed without having to go all the way with the types of development that were identified. Now, in order to fully understand the carrying capacity of the soil, a soil analysis needs to be completed on those sites. We didn't have the funding to go ahead and do those soil assessments within those sites themselves, but we would think that would be one of the things to consider moving forward in terms of availability of water, but also just the overall cost of infrastructure.
Okay. Thanks, Jordan. With respect to the other questions that you had, Director Bodner, when it comes to contamination on sites, it's definitely an important issue. It's one that will drastically increase the cost of developing a site to allow new development on it. So it's another, if choices are made to move forward with developing in any of these industrial sites, there are other questions still to consider, and that's an important one. And your final point related to employment and the sort of the stickiness of it, I guess the degree to which the jobs will stay local. I think whether it's industrial or other types of commercial investment that bring new money into the community. It's not like retail that recirculates money, but businesses that bring in new money, like manufacturers or agri-food processors, or and those don't have to be hundreds of employees. They can be 1, 2, or 5 or 10 employees as well. I think those are the types of businesses that do create a local, opportunities for local labor to participate in. They're not meant to attract transient laborers or workforce. They are part of, and it's an important mix of any community to have a good base of employment in those types of wealth generating kind of sectors.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other comments? Oh, Director McNabb, please go ahead.
So the Link Mill site, I think, is a bit undersold on this report. I've had a fair bit to do with that site over many years about other projects, and there was like millions of dollars spent on compaction at that site for the idea of putting in a mill in there. It's also relatively close to a city water source, which I certainly have to be a negotiation with the city, but it's also close to a year-round stream that runs across the road at the current, I think it's a shake mill. Plus it has access to power, which is not sort of to the same level as it's actually a better source of power than the ones at the airport. So I think it really has a lot more to offer than agri business. I think it really is an opportunity for manufacturing. Its proximity by road to shipping is good, and so I think there's really it's a site of major interest to me, but it's kind of undersold on this. I think it could be an opportunity to do just about anything in manufacturing, and just because I know how they put that thing together, I know what it costs, and it's sad to see it sit like it is.
Just Director McNabb, this is as mentioned, or maybe not mentioned necessarily, but it's on the report. It's a draft report. We can add a reference to manufacturing being a usable permitted use or an ideal permitted use for the site, if you'd like.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for that. Dr. Paulson, please go ahead.
Just a quick question, and we don't need a long answer for this, but I'm just curious why the Somas Mill site isn't on this conversation. I think that we'll ever see that mill fire up again in its present incarnation. And I know long-term visioning is probably for that property to have multi-use, but I'm just curious why the Somas Mill site wasn't at least in the conversation, maybe from a 30,000 foot view, but just curious.
If I may jump in, Mr. Chair, we're very conscious of the opportunity that the Somas Mill presents, but it's privately owned, and until the owner signals that the curtailment turns into something more, and they decide to sell the property, we did not think it was appropriate to include it. You will see that there's a box, a discussion box on the same page where the sites are mentioned, where there's an acknowledgement that there might be an opportunity there, but we did not think it was at all appropriate to include it. And so for that reason, it was left out.
Okay, thank you for that. I'm wondering if there are any other comments to be had. Okay, thank you, Pat. And sorry I didn't introduce you. Of course, you're linked into this. Okay. All right. On behalf of the board, I'd like to thank you for your presentation, and we hope to see updates as they arise. And yeah, have a good one.
Have a good afternoon. Thank you.
Okay, so that brings us to the next item, which is a presentation regarding a rezoning application on the highway, Pat Grimm Highway, from Mr. Ross Stevens. Is he here, Mike?
No, Mr. Chair. So Mr. Stevens reached out to staff after the agenda was out and asked that this just be deferred to the next board meeting at the beginning of March. He's putting his presentation together and hiring a consultant. So I can speak more to that when it comes up on the agenda. So
okay, Director McNabb. Oh, you're
motion to defer.
Do we have a seconder? Okay, everyone. All of those in favor? Motion carried. So I can't remember which agenda item that is directly, but that item will just be deferred to the next meeting then. So thank you for that. Okay, so that brings us to correspondence for action, of which there is none. And then item 8 is correspondence for information. We have something from Kootenay Boundary. We have something from the Biosphere Trust. We have something from PAPA, as well as the ICC, the Island Coastal Economic Trust, and the Anti-Human Trafficking Report. Would anyone like to pull anything out? I think my first question is, let's see here. Director Cote, do you need a nomination? Or is that all set up?
Yes, I do need a nomination.
Okay.
I am running for first vice president.
Oh, great.
Once again, I hold that position right now. But the president is wanting to stay on for another year since it was a short year.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to challenge him at all.
Okay.
Thank you.
Director McNabb.
So do we make that nomination here, or how do we handle that?
I'll need a couple signatures.
Oh, yeah. Okay. No, that's
Got
great.
mine.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Put it on the screen.
What I'll do is probably bring my papers to the regional district and leave them there for signatures. That
Okay,
would be acceptable.
Sounds great.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Would anyone like to pull anything else out? Go ahead.
This AVIC, no, not that one. The ICE-T one.
Mm-hmm.
So do we recognize any possibilities within the community to actually utilize this, or can we be catalysts to utilize it somehow?
I think there are definite possibilities. Oh, there's Douglas. Please go ahead.
As we talked about in the committee of the whole meeting this morning, there is an absolute avalanche of grants. So we haven't digested this, but that is a good question. So we'll have a look through it and see what we can come up with respect to commentary on any part of this. Thank you.
I think there are plenty of opportunities through it. We just need to coordinate and again get our ducks in a row to get behind the right ones. Director Shannon, please go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to note that the kitchen's open in the Doc Plus, which is great for what a lot of the Ag Development Committee has been working on, the city and a lot of partners, and it's up and going. So it's a great opportunity for that end of the valley. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay, could we get, oh, sorry, Director Cote and then Director McNabb.
Thank you. In response to the announcement of the, what's it called? The Dock Food Hub Kitchen, should we send a letter of congratulations from the regional district?
Would you like to make that motion, Director Cote?
Is it the time? I would make that motion, or do I have to wait until after?
I don't think so. We haven't
Okay.
moved anything else. So
I'd like to make that motion then.
would you like to second that, Director Shannon? Okay. All those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Thank you for this suggestion, Dr. Cote. And you had a second thing? Or was there not? No? Okay. Dr. McNabb, please go ahead.
So I'd move that the board of directors receive items A to F for information.
And thank you, Director Beckett, for seconding. All those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Okay, that brings us to decisions and bylaws. First of which is the Memorandum of Understanding with First Nations for Voyant Alert. So it looks like two separate motions, one for Shot Hopetchit and one for Ho'et and Hochuklasut. Heather?
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, so like Chair Jack just mentioned, this is related to Voyant Alert. So that's our emergency notification system for the Alberni Valley and Banfield. And so we have offered to enter into a memorandum of understanding with the 4 nations that are located in these areas. The MOU sets out how we would use the emergency notification system on First Nation lands. It would allow First Nation residents to locate their home location or their work location in the program, and it would allow them to receive emergency notifications for anything that impacts their specific locations. Currently, right now, we've excluded those First Nations until we reach agreement with them. So this would allow them to register their home or work locations. So Tashat and Hupachesset have both signed the MOU. They're willing to enter into these agreements. Huweit will be reviewing this at their council meeting on the 11th, and Uchuklasut will be reviewing it next week. So if either of those nations want to enter into the agreement, that is the purpose of the second resolution in the report.
Thank you. Any comments or questions? Am I? Oh no, we're okay. Thank you, Director Roberts.
Would you like somebody to move that motion?
Yeah, I think there are 2 motions. I think we'll keep them separate.
The first?
Yep. Okay, so the first one moved by Director Roberts. Second one, or seconded by Director McNabb. Thank you. Any comments? Okay, seeing none. This is the motion for Tisha and Hupachesset. All those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Okay, and Director Roberts, you want to move the other one? Thank you, Director Roberts. Seconded by. Thank you, Director McNabb. Any further comments? Good, seeing none. All those in favor? Motion carried.
Can I just add one thing, Chair Jack?
Please go ahead.
I just want to note that we are going to test Voyant Alert next week on Wednesday at 1 p.m. And this is the same time as the tsunami warning siren. So you as directors are all registered with the system. So you are going to receive a notification on your phone. And the 1,200 people who have signed up for Voyant Alert will also receive the notification. So we'll be advertising on social media and in the newspaper to raise awareness of the test coming up.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you very much for that. I think that brings us into the next item, which is a request for decision regarding Emergency Management BC proposed financial guidelines. Is that you again, Heather?
Yeah.
Please take it away.
Thank you. So Emergency Management BC posted new financial guidelines last November with very little consultation with local government and First Nations. So there was quite a bit of pushback from those parties. So EMBC has provided until the end of February to provide feedback. So I've done a review of the new financial guidelines, and I've highlighted some of the concerns that I have for the regional district and for the city. When we have an emergency, we get a task number from the province, and there's eligible expenses that we can recover. Some of these expenses are no longer going to be eligible. I'll just give a couple examples. One example is we generally use staff either from the regional district or the city to open a reception center. Lots of times that occurs outside of working hours. So if staff are used to open up the building, to run computers, printers, access the facilities, they're paid overtime, and we have been able to recover those costs. So in the new financial guidelines, no staff time is going to be covered, which I don't think is reasonable because the province is moving to modernization of ESS and reception centers requiring the use of computers. So to rely solely on volunteers, I don't think is realistic. We will need staff resources. So if the guidelines go ahead as proposed, the local government is going to be on the hook for these costs, which in a major emergency could be a significant cost. They've also made some changes to financial tracking, which is more onerous for the finance staff in an emergency operations center. It's a lot of duplication, and it's a lot of receipts and invoices and daily tracking. In emergency, tracking daily expenses and reporting that to EMBC is probably not feasible. Weekly or biweekly is more reasonable. So I have provided my comments in the report, and then I've attached a draft letter from Chair Jack to EMBC outlining our concerns. Many other municipalities and regional districts have done the same. So we're hoping that EMBC will reconsider some of these proposed changes.
Thank you for that. Now, do we have any comments or questions? There we go. Dr. Steer, please go ahead. And Dr. Cole, if you're still around, I'd love to hear from you on this too.
Yeah, thank you very much, Heather, for the report. And those proposed changes did have the potential for some significant financial consequences for local government, as well as potentially affect operations during the recovery portions of an emergency. We, as I'm sure Heather knows, had discussed this at the district at Tofino level and have submitted our responses, which were very concurrent or very in line with the written responses that Heather has brought forward. And I highly support and thank her once again for bringing those concerns forward in such a concise way.
Great, thank you. Dr. McNabb, oh, sorry. Thank you, Dr. Cole. If you have anything to say on this, I would very much appreciate it. I know you're busy, but.
Sorry, I'm just about 2 minutes from home. I'm driving, so I'll just be right with you guys.
Okay, all right. Dr. McNabb, please go ahead.
So I would move that the Alberni-Claycott Regional District Board of Directors provide a written response to the Emergency Management BC outlining the concerns, the proposed financial guidelines.
Thank you. And seconded by Director Roberts. Any further comments? All right, seeing none. Oh, Director Shannon, please go ahead.
If Director Cole wants to speak to this and we go on to the next one, do we have to do anything special to allow her to come back to this agenda item to speak to it?
I don't think so. I think at this point, I think she would be supportive of it. I'm just wondering if there's anything else we might want to do in addition to sending a letter.
Oh, there's.
I think we just made her pull over. Sorry, Dr. Cole.
Sorry, I'm just trying to be helpful with your 2 minutes.
Thank you. I appreciate that. No, I'm pulled over, and I I'm supportive of everything that was done. I don't know if there is any other avenues that we have. Is there anything that we haven't, is there anything else that can be done? I guess would be my question.
I think that's a question for staff. Douglas, I'm going to let my toddler into the room because she's screeching. But please go ahead.
Mr. Chair, what I would suggest is our MLA, Minister Osborne, is making rounds to her constituents, and she will be at a committee of the whole meeting coming up a week from Friday, and we can add this to the list of conversation pieces for her, and she can carry that message for us as well. Thank you.
I think that would be great. Do we have to make any addition to the motion or anything like that, or another motion for that, or is that just going to happen?
We will just add it to the agenda as well, and I would certainly encourage the board of directors to forward anything else to staff as well that they would like to talk about. But we will absolutely add this item. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, sorry. We do have the motion. So unless there's anything else to add to the motion, I think we'll just call a question. All those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Okay. All right, next up we have a request for decision regarding interregional transit service. Jenny, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this item was put in the parking lot at our February 17th financial plan presentation. Staff reached out to BC Transit to discuss different options for interregional transit. We've attached a few concerned letters from the health network, as well as we've heard from the city, who are also interested in this. So we know this is an important issue. In talking with BC Transit, they gave a little more background information on basically interregional transit and how it's been looked at on Vancouver Island. They did do a study in 2015 to look at interregional transit, basically going from Victoria up to Campbell River. And what's been moving along, pieces within that has moved along, is with Nanaimo and the Cowichan Valley. And so the process for implementing new services, and especially these interregional services, is that it has to be incorporated into basically the master plan or the future plan for service. And so that's the first step. So with Cowichan Valley and Nanaimo, they both had interregional transit basically in their future plans. And now they're working on what that might look like if they do want to go forward with that. So the interregional portion is a little bit different than when you have just your regular community transit systems that sort of come close to each other and people hop off one and hop on to another. And this would be more like what you see with Tofino Bus or a chartered bus system, this interregional transit concept. So we do have on our work plan in 2022 to do a future service plan for the ACRD and the City of Port Alberni, to look at what are the transit needs, looking at some of the ones that have been identified. And we haven't put interregional transit on that work plan, but we can, and we can update the terms of reference if that is what the board would like. So that is the recommendation that is on the report.
Thank you. Director McNabb, if you will, go ahead.
So with the presentation of Wilson Bus, I mean, I really think that what needs to happen here is that we need to encourage the provincial government, aka BC Transit or whatever, to be supporting these businesses that are the bus services. I mean, the problem is if there isn't a financial capability to run a business, a bus as a business, then what's it going to look like once it becomes a quasi-government run system? And so I think working with Wilson Bus to provide some kind of financial stability for them is a far better option than trying to reinvent the wheel and the costs that go along with that. I think we're far closer to a resolution by just supporting the bus line that already exists.
Okay, thank you for that. I have Director Cote, and then I was going to say something. Are there any other? Okay, Director Cote, please go ahead.
Thank you. So it's suggested in here that this is something that AVICC could take a look at and support. We have the deadline for resolutions is this coming Friday. And a couple weeks after that, the AVICC executive will be taking a look at the resolutions, pulling out any local resolutions and sending the rest off to UBCM. Because if it's local, they'll just send it back to us. I think that the bus service is something that is more than just local area. I think that it's a problem all across BC. I think that this needs to go to UBCM rather than AVICC, looking at that aspect. The transportation forums that I've been to have about a year and a half ago, something like that, there was suggestion that BC Transit was going to take a look at different service models. And this included like province-wide service. So it was supported by the province rather than individual communities. So, just the far extreme would be something, I think it's Switzerland or somewhere where everybody pays into the bus service, everybody has a free bus pass and nobody pays from a community. So like that's one extreme. Whether or not the province is looking at that type of a service going forward because of all of the problems that they do have in all communities right now. The bigger communities are having extreme losses with their transit service. A lot of the COVID relief funding was meant to help to accommodate costs for the losses on things like bus service. So I believe that service providers will all be should all be in that conversation with the province going forward as far as how are we going to deal with the service provisions for our communities that are extremely needed. And I think this needs to go to UBCM rather than just AVICC from what I read in this report. I think that anything that our staff can bring forward, I'm sure that there's going to be conversations coming soon, and I'm hoping to see something in the resolutions coming to AVICC end of the week. Thanks.
All right, thank you. All right, so I'll chime in here and say that in regards to this particular item, I see this as a stepping stone to investigating a bunch of different permutations of what the transit solution will be, whether it be private, public, or some hybrid thereof. Regardless of what that looks like, it's very likely that we're going to have to update the regional transit plan anyway. So I do think that we should agree to add that amongst the mandates that are talked about in that plan. What that looks like, we don't know. But I think, and I would caution folks from just only thinking about transit and transportation as something that needs to make sense from a business perspective, because it's actually the opposite when it comes to like public transit. The idea is that you build it and it will come. The idea is that you need to be presenting an alternative to people having to buy cars. And then they can start to rely that. I know that's the idea though, right? So, but the idea there is that public transit gets used when it's there to be used. It's not the other way around, or else you'll never build it. And this is something I speak to from the perspective of First Nations and from peoples and studies that have been conducted in regards to transit, public transit being one of the major factors in people escaping poverty. It's right up there with health and that sort of, and education. So as much as I appreciate Wilson Transit for the tourism aspect that gets brought in, from a public perspective, this is something that I think we do need to see the province and regional districts and private and a whole bunch of others kind of ring in on this. So when Director Cote, Vice President Cote, talks about not just the AVICC being involved here, it's also the UBCM. This is something that is, we're going to turn a corner on this at some point, and it's going to matter a lot if it doesn't already. And I think that presentation or that understanding of how that cost gets carried is important. But once public transit gets to a point where it's reliable for someone to transit from the Alberni Valley where they may live to a job somewhere in Parksville or Nanaimo, and realistically be able to get to do that in the same general amount of time that you can do driving, then that's when public transit starts to actually impact people's lives. So I don't want to go on a diatribe, and it's not an attack on you, Director McNabb. I actually forgot that you have a car lot, but I do know that you're up next, so please go ahead.
So first it's electric cars, now it's no cars. So what I'm getting at here is we already have the wheel. We don't have to reinvent it. All that has to happen is BC Transit needs to realize that there are other options out there besides getting a new bus and getting a new route and having the municipalities and the regional districts pay for that. And so this is that bus system already exists. They already have their garages. The garages are one thing that BC Transit always keys on, is where is this thing going to be maintained? How's it going to be maintained? Who's going to maintain it? That's already there. All that has to happen is that somebody, in a line of somebody's, has to realize that that system exists. All we have to do is massage it a bit. And it can provide the same service, likely cheaper than we're going to be able to provide it with whatever they call their funny names for their buses. So I mean, I really think that it's a quick and easy option. Just find a way to get the bus back on the road, and then find a way to get more buses from I mean, they've got them. It's just a matter of utilizing, to fill that gap. None of the discussions that I've had with BC Transit have ever suggested that they use a subcontract like that. All of them have said that there's other options, different size buses. They can have a minivan with somebody driving it, but they're all under BC Transit. So they're protecting their own little house. And this just makes sense. It's synergy. So I don't agree with putting it into a BC Transit plan. I would like to see us make our own plan and invite the government to support it. Quick and easy.
Okay. So I think we can do both, honestly speaking, and that can be covered off. I do think that finding a solution is something where we do both and find some sort of way to make it work. What I want to do, though, is ensure that we have the entirety of all the options available to us so that we can somehow cobble together a network that works. I do think that there is a definite spot for private producers, private companies to provide these services, and in good cost and good function. I think that's something where I'm more than willing to lean on the province to not necessarily just look at that singular transit system. We do need to look at something more flexible as time goes by. So I would suggest that we continue on with adding this as per the recommendation, but do not let go of the idea that we need to look at all the options available. Because I do know of the importance that Wilson Transport does have in place. And so I think that's something that doesn't commit us to necessarily doing it, but allowing for that to happen is something that I think we do need that option to explore realistically what's going on, and as a sense of kind of petite leverage with the province to go, okay, this is something that we're prepared to do, and look at this. And I have had communications from the chairs of different regional districts asking to be involved in some way, shape, or form on this. And I wanted to make sure that we have the appropriate recommendations behind us there. With that in mind, Director Cote and anyone else, I'm wondering, oh, all of the pictures changed again. Okay,
Thank you.
please go ahead.
Thank you. It's not clear in here exactly what an transit plan would look like. Is it just within the regional district, or does it connect us to other communities like Nanaimo, where that missing link would be a big loss, because that connects us to the outside world rather than our own little world. Thanks.
Thank you. And yeah, the current plan doesn't have that, and the idea is to add that in. Is that correct? Yeah. Okay. So that's the idea there. Any further comments? Okay, so we do have a recommended motion. Director Cote?
I'll make the motion that that Port Alberni ACRD Transit Future Service Plan terms of reference be expanded to include investigation of inter-regional transit service to be conducted in 2022.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder?
I'll second, thanks.
Thanks. Okay, any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. All right, thank you very much. That brings us to, item D, the North Island 911 Corporation Shareholders Resolutions. Douglas, please go ahead.
Well, Mr. Chair, as much as I signed this report, I wonder if Director McNabb would like to speak to this.
Yeah.
So the gift that just keeps on giving. So I'm happy to announce that yesterday, both Nanaimo Regional District and Comox Regional District unanimously voted to support the funding formula. And that's important because they were both the screamers about the way the allocation was and the way the allocation was planned to be. So they're all looking at it like this is somehow a small wedge to get into a funding discussion that's going to change the funding model substantially over a period of time. And my take on all of this is we're benevolent here, and we actually saw that there was a discrepancy in the way that this was the future of it looked and the way it was being funded, and that we're stepping up to the pump. But I don't see this as an invitation to jiggle this further at another date, even though there is a revisit of this in 3 years. I think the general support, other than Nanaimo and Comox, is thinking the way I am, that we're changing this. It fits, it works, and this is really what I'm looking forward to have in the future. So I think everybody's kind of read the reports and everything else. I mean, we have pages and pages and pages of this over a period of time. But I would like to move the motion at this point, and we can discuss it, that the Alberni-Claycott Board of Directors consent to the North Island 911 Corporation shareholders resolution as provided in Appendix A to the correspondence dated February 19th, 2021 from the North Island 911 Corporation, and it's attached. And I think that these can be run together, don't you?
Yep, there's an and, so
yeah. And that the chair and CAO be authorized to execute the resolutions on behalf of the Alberni-Claycott Regional District. So that's my motion. I don't know if it's got a seconder there.
Do we have a seconder? Director Roberts? Yep. Okay. Do we have any comments? Director Cote?
Thank you. I have a question to staff. Through the chair, regarding the proposed 50% assessment, 50% population. That is the way that we are built. How will that translate through to our taxation? Will it go to assessment based only? Because that changes the allocation.
My presumption is yes, it is. I wonder if Terry is available to comment on that.
If the board would like to change the establishing bylaw for the apportionment within the regional district, we could bring that back and the process for doing that. But no, changing the apportionment between the regional districts does not change the apportionment at the regional district itself for how we tax. But we could bring the establishing bylaw back to the board for discussion if you would like.
I would like that, please. This brings me back to the library, and that is the way that the library bills us is 50% per capita, 50% assessment based, and then the regional district takes it and does the assessment based only to tax us. So when I'm billed in one way, I'd like it to carry through to taxation. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so that can be planned ahead. So thank you for that, though. Are there any other comments or questions on the motion? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. I think somebody just fell upstairs. I'd just like to take some time to thank Director McNabb for doing so much of the heavy lifting on this particular file. There is a reason why the other communities kind of came to Jesus on this, that the idea here is well thought out, and I just want to commend the work that was done on the phones, in the meetings, and just in discussions and planning. I really do think this is a good resolution and that we can move ahead with improving things further. But I think this is pretty much what you predicted was going to happen all those months ago, and that's how it did. So thank you. Okay. With that brings us to item E, which is the AVICC resolution submission on unauthorized camping. And that brings us to Douglas. Is that you?
Sure.
Please go ahead.
Mr. Chair, it's really up to the board on how many things it would like to bring to AVICC. So for example, the bus service or emergency planning EMBC guidelines, for example, are two things that came from this agenda that could go to AVICC. In terms of recommending what to do, I think a targeted sort of eggs in one basket is a better approach rather than having a whole bunch of things at AVICC, but that is truly up to the board. So thinking about those other two matters, there's active discussions going on in those things and other mechanisms. The matter that we're putting forward right now, I think is kind of new frontier in some ways, in that there isn't a relationship or a mechanism ready to handle something that is so truly multi-jurisdictional. So that is why we've recommended this one particular item, Mr. Chair, and I'd be happy to speak on its merits individually. But I'm pretty sure that all of the board is pretty much up to speed. Thanks.
Great. Any comments or questions? How do we like the wording of the submission? So I think it looks okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I don't, yeah. Director Cote, do you have?
Just a reminder that Friday's the deadline for any other resolutions, and I only see this one.
Mm-hmm.
So there would be not much time to put anything together besides this meeting. So I agree with, I like the wording in this. And just to say also that ABICC is wanting to pare down all of the resolutions coming forward to like 5 or 6 main resolutions to send to UBCM. Yes, this is quite pointed though. I think it's an issue that all areas can relate to. Thanks.
I think that makes a lot of sense. Thank you. Would you like to move the adoption of that particular motion?
I will move the adoption of this recommendation.
All right, thank you. Dr. Steer, second. Do you have a comment? Okay. All right, thank you very much. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Great. Thank you very much for that. All righty, that brings us to planning matters. So this is for the electoral area discussion only. Is this the one that we just deferred? I believe it is.
Yes, it is, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so we will we'll return to this later, I think. Oh, and there are no more planning matters. Well, thanks for showing up, Mike. That brings us to reports, staff reports. And before we get to Heather's verbal report on EOC updates, does anyone have anything to say about the meeting schedule or the building report? Looks pretty straightforward. It's already all in our calendars now, so it should be all right. Okay, Heather, please take it away.
Thank you. Okay, so these are numbers from yesterday. The new numbers just came out and I didn't have time to tabulate them. Provincially, there were 550 new COVID cases yesterday for a total of 4,677 active cases. In the Island Health region, we have 232 active cases, with the majority of these cases still in Central Island, although there's been a recent increase in North Island since last week. The rise and fall of these cases on the island show that no community is immune to COVID, and that any one community could be the next flare-up. The ACRD as a whole is doing well. There hasn't been any community transmission. All COVID cases have been able to be traced to their source. Testing is being done on the new variants. Approximately 70% of all COVID tests are now being screened for variants, which is good news. On Vancouver Island, there have been 2 people that were infected with variants, and they had 2 close contacts. So there was a total of 4 people on Vancouver Island that were impacted by variants. And there haven't been any additional variants identified on Vancouver Island at this point. As far as immunization, we're in the tail end of the phase 1 of the provincial immunization plan. The province is going to announce on Monday the rest of the details about their provincial immunization plan. Mass vaccination clinics are expected to start on April 6th, starting with the 80 and over group and First Nations 65 and older. Prior to the clinics being open, there will be vaccinations for the older population who are independent living and those who receive home care. There haven't been many details shared about this, but Dr. Henry announced yesterday that further information would be coming within the next couple of weeks. This week, Dr. Henry issued a new public health order that will allow for additional health professions to issue the vaccine, including dentists, midwives, pharmacy technicians, paramedics, retired nurses. And so this will allow for a wider delivery of the vaccine. Over 224,000 people have been vaccinated, including 58,000 second doses. Locally, immunizations are continuing for staff and residents of long-term care homes for those that weren't able to get it the first time around. And they'll be also starting second doses shortly for that group of people. Hospitalizations and ICU admissions are steadily declining, which is showing very good success of the vaccine program, targeting those who are most at risk of serious illness and death. And that is it, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any comments or questions? How are you with inoculations, Rochelle?
I actually was just in a house helping with their second doses yesterday, so that was nice to see. It is a little concerning that I had my first dose a month or 32 days ago now, and a week after I'd had it, I got a phone call to see if I wanted one. So I was a little concerned that the one hand didn't know what the other arm got already poked, and then of course concerns about the timing of the second doses. A little bit concerned there, and that it sounds like the optimal window for the second dose seems to be changing based on maybe not necessarily the science, but the actual availability of the doses. So that's unfortunate that it seems to be a little bit compromised that way. But other than that, we're all ready to go for mass inoculation out here on the West Coast.
Mm-hmm. The political stretching is something that we are seeing, and that's problematic. Okay, Director Steer, please go ahead.
Yeah, I just, my wife today had her, she's a healthcare provider in a house, and just had her second dose today. And I just had a text that she's on her way home from that. And yesterday with Rochelle up there, there was quite a number as well that had their second shot provided.
I'm just really happy to hear that community got their dosages in, because it's an island. Yeah. Okay, any further comments? All right, seeing none, could we get a motion to receive the staff reports, please? Or did you have anything else, Heather? All good. All right, thank you, Director Beckett, and seconded by, I think, Director Cole. Thank you. All right, all those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Okay. All right, that brings us to committee reports 11.2. This is an Alberni Valley Regional Airport Advisory Committee report, and I don't know who's giving it.
Mr. Chair, I don't know if Director Cote wants to give this, or Director Paulson, or if they'd like me to.
Director Cote?
Sure, I'll give you my take on the meetings. So we've had 3 workshops so far with consultants Mark Duncan and Andrew Cuthbert. It's been a fast process. It's been very enlightening. I think they're doing a wonderful job. There was a survey done to the community with a lot of valuable information passed on. We have, I think, one more meeting where they'll have the final report coming forward for the Regional District Board with some recommendations. Because we're very well positioned going forward, because we have open space, airspace. So it gives us plenty of opportunity for all kinds of different development, aeronautical, economic development. So sticking with that, and possibly having options to request maybe slight deviations from the aeronautical industry. I think that we're very well placed moving forward, and look forward to the final results. We've got partnerships identified, communications and engagement, local opportunities, working with First Nations. We're looking forward to our grand opening, because we haven't had that yet with the expansion, $8 million that we've invested in the expansion of our airport. We're really looking forward to being able to showcase that and partner with our community and explain to our community exactly what we have, this gem that we have. So if Director Paulson has anything that he'd like to add.
Well, just more specifically, yesterday was our third session with the consultants. It dealt with visioning and strategic planning for the regional airport, and developing strategic priorities in the capital plan. Just a matter of interest. I'd like to bring forward, I don't think a lot of people understand quite how our airport is growing and the usage out there. We have obviously one anchor tenant that is larger than anything that Nanaimo has in their stable. But I think that, and Douglas, maybe you could correct me if I'm wrong on the number, but there are 15 customers or 15 leases out at the airport, and they're quite diverse. And I don't think that our general public understands that we are at that level of service and industry out there. I think we still have that stigma that it's the Colson Regional Airport, but it's not. It's far more diverse than that. And I could be wrong on that number, but I think it's around 14 or 15 leases that we hold out there. And this committee is new to me, and I have found the last 3 meetings to be extremely uplifting and extremely positive. The future, I think, if we do this right, is going to be good for the valley. And we do have a new business, and the gentleman reached out to me. He's moving his business from Squamish. It's a flight school to Alberni Valley. And his comment was, for him, the Squamish Airport is closed for business due to over-regulation. And the thing he liked is the Alberni Valley is open for business. Anyway, that's just some general observations. And the last 3 meetings have been more workshops, and they've been really, really productive.
Thank you for that. Are there any further comments or questions? Okay. Director Bodnar, please go ahead.
I'm just wondering if it would be possible. I'm having some computer issues, and I'm wondering if it'd be possible for I can give them my report next in case I get lost on here.
Okay. So we'll go right to that after we do a verbal report received. Yes, please
To
do.
receive our verbal report.
Thank you, Director Cote. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Paulson. Okay, all those in favor? Motion carried. I just would leave off saying that I'm really happy to see the work that's being done there in regards to setting up a plan to really take advantage of the improvements that have occurred there. There are a lot of opportunities that have been opened up by the investments that we've made, and I think we need to treat them as investments and not pretend that they're somehow costs that are just gone forever. They're not. This is something that is vital infrastructure that can really benefit us going into the future. So thank you for the work that you're doing, and let's just keep disciplined and make sure that we execute those kind of visions as we move through time. Okay, so with member reports, I do think we should go straight to the Air Quality Council reports. So Diane, if you wanted to give your report on item 11.3D, please go ahead.
Thank you for that. Yes, at our meeting on February the 11th, Jade Yadia from the VHAL came and gave a presentation on air quality and health resources and data. And I did send a copy of that presentation to all the directors. As far as there was some good information on there. As far as the wood stove exchange goes, 6 realtors are participating in this year's wood stove exchange program. And talk about communication working. ACRD gave some surplus money for advertising to air quality to run on the radio for 8 weeks. And since January the 27th, 5 vouchers have been requesting wood stove exchange. 2 are for wood stove to wood stove, and 3 are for alternate heating. So that was really pleased to see that much happen in such a short time. And as far as the webcam goes, there will be one installed at the water tower at the AB landfill, and then the province will be taking care of it. It'll be solar power, so less maintenance will be involved, and there will not be one up at the City Hall. The purple air monitors installed. There's one at Falls and Lugren, at Cherry Creek Fire Hall, and somewhere off the Cassuxis Road. And a letter has been sent to the First Nations, to Sheshot and Chespasset, and Ken Watts is interested in looking into that as well. So that's it.
That sounds great. It's a great update. I do have a comment or a question, and I don't know that it's necessarily Air Quality Council, but I would note that I read a few articles about industries that supply wood stoves, really kind of pushing back against what other jurisdictions are doing. I just want to reiterate the wisdom in the wood stove exchange program that we have. It allows for people to continue to burn wood, but potentially upgrade their systems to better. So I'm just glad that that's hopefully still in place and that that's going to affect things as time goes by. I just want to take the time to iterate that wood stove and wood burning isn't a luxury. It's often a necessity for those families that can't afford baseboard and don't have access to natural gas. So hopefully your connection keeps working, Diane, but thank you for your update. But if you disappear, we understand and it's okay. So that'll bring us right up to the first item, the 911 Corporation update, which I assume we've already had, Director McNabb, but
yeah, so the only thing that I'd kind of like to mention that is I'd like to have a discussion with Charlie and the city fire chief with regards to the call numbers for the city of Port Alberni. I think if we understand exactly why those call numbers are so out of skew from everybody else, we may be able to react to that, and reacting to that is going to change the forward thinking of the rest of the 911 participants. So I think there's some very good reasons why those numbers are the way they are, and there may be opportunities to statistically have the numbers lower than they are. So that's pretty much it. I thank you for your support, and now we've got a couple of years to go on without this discussion every week.
Yes.
And we have a meeting next week, so.
Okay. Thank you for your update and thank you for your work on that. I think that brings us to the Vancouver Island Regional Library. Director Cote.
Thank you. I have no report at this time.
Okay.
Meeting coming.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Alberni Valley Chamber of Commerce, Director Minions, or designate.
I'm on. I just don't have my video. Okay. No report. I wasn't able to make it to their last meeting, unfortunately.
Okay. West Coast Aquatic, Director Steer.
Thank you, Chair Jack. I did have a meeting with the Executive Director, Tani Lam, as an orientation meeting, and fortunately I had some peripheral historical involvement many years ago, and so was able to get up to speed fairly quickly. I do note that in the interim since that conversation, there has been a letter sent forward to the board members to, in essence, have a refresh of the mandate. I think it was clear that the West Coast Aquatic was in a bit of a lull, let us say. So this will be an important refresh of that mandate. And I think in the very near future, we may see a much more concise direction moving forward for West Coast Aquatic.
Thank you. That brings us to item F, the Association of Vancouver, AVICC. Director Cote, please go ahead.
Looking for resolutions. We discussed everything earlier, and I'm running for first vice again. Thank you.
Beaver Creek Water Advisory Committee, Director McNabb.
Oh, very fluid at this moment, no meeting, but I could handle the next one if you wanted. It wasn't WEWAG?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, I don't know if you were actually at that meeting. There was a million of us at it, but so the meeting was last Thursday. It's typically about a 2.5 hour meeting. And a couple of the things that were discussed were the use of LiDAR, which we've used in our mapping for the regional district. I'd never seen this type of implementation of using LiDAR for timber stands, and it was really quite interesting. The science behind it is phenomenal, and it really does save a lot of on the ground looking up at trees and everything else, because it can measure everything from the air, plus the topography, where they're going to build the roads and least impact and everything else. So that was pretty interesting. The impact of waste requirements, wood waste requirements by the province was a bit of a discussion and a presentation. Western Forest Product currently pays about $1.1 million in fines for wood waste that's left on site, and this can include maple and alder and many other things. It includes any tree stump that's over 3 feet high. So it's quite in depth, and I suspect that the government wants it that way, so wood utilization is better, and efforts to mitigate this by trying to get people in to clean up the wood waste or utilize it like in the paper mill have been really met with not much interest. So and then we went on to the effects of slash burning on carbon indicator. So this is really getting interesting now. So I mean, the impact of on the carbon factor is huge with burning slash piles, and so they really are looking ways to get around that and have less of an impact that way, because it affects their carbon credits. And that was pretty much it. That covered that whole time to 8:15 at night, and I didn't fall asleep.
And thank you for that. The last WEBAG meeting I was at was several months ago, so I'm glad that you were able to cover it off. Probably at the time I was trying to wrangle the kids into bed, so thank you. That brings us to Agricultural Development Committee, Director Shannon.
Thank you. We reported at the last meeting that we had the ADC got together with Honorable Josie Osborne for a meeting. There is no other meetings scheduled yet at this time, but there should be one coming up in March because the Grow Local program will be is in the works. All seeds are being ordered and organized and everything to get that ready for spring. Should be around April that they start selling. The package is available for the program. Yeah, thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, that brings us to any other report. Anyone have any other reports? Okay, seeing none, we do have a motion to receive the reports. Thank you, Director McNabb, and thank you, Director Roberts. Okay, all those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Okay, we don't have any unfinished business. We don't have any late business. Question period. Did we get any responses in regards to the agenda or the open part of the meeting on the budget?
No, Mr. Chair, we've had no questions or comments from the public respecting the meeting today.
Okay, so that will bring us into the in-camera portion of the agenda. So I will move this, but I should read it out before we go offline. We will move to close the meeting to the public as per the community charter under sections 91G, litigation or potential litigation affecting the regional district. Item 2, 91I, the receipt of advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communication necessary for that purpose. Item 3, 91J, information that is prohibited or information that if it were presented in a document would be prohibited from disclosure under section 21 of FOIPA and section 21(1)(c)(1) of FOIPA, i.e. the head of a public body must refuse to disclose to an applicant information that would reveal the disclosure of which could reasonably be expected to harm significantly the competitive position or interfere significantly with the negotiating position of a third party. And then item 4, 92B, the consideration of information received and held in confidence relating to negotiations between the regional district and the provincial government or the federal government, or both, or between a provincial government or the federal government, or both, and a third party. That's a bit of a mouthful, but that is the nature of going in camera today. And once we do so, we'll go offline. It's likely I'll call a bit of a bio break and go from there. Do we have a seconder for it? All right, thank you, Director Johnson. Any comments?
Could I get somebody to resend that to me? I seem to have lost it in this mass of emails.
Yeah.
So maybe Janice or somebody could resend it to me.
I will, John.
You have it? Okay, it's dated Monday at 3:11 from Janice. If you want to go look for it. Okay, all those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried.
Okay. Oh, I got it. I got it now.
Okay. So we will go into the in-camera portion of the agenda. I'm not going to call the order yet. I'm going to ask if we can come back in, I'll say 10 minutes for a quick bio break.